On the night of September 29th, a quiet New Jersey community woke up to a horror no parent wants to hear about. Two teenage girls, 17-year-olds Maria Neotus and Isabella Salas, were struck and killed in a hit-and-run. They were riding home from a school event when their lives were violently cut short. What made the scene so hard for the town to accept was how little about it felt accidental. Neighbors and friends who knew the girls said almost immediately that this did not appear random. Within hours, a picture began to emerge of a crash that many believe was deliberate, and a suspect who, according to reporting, had been fixated on one of the victims. Police described the basic facts. A black Jeep Compass struck the girls and left the scene. First responders found the victims on the street. Both were pronounced dead. Local news crews and helicopters soon showed images of a suburban road turned into a crime scene. Police tape, investigators with evidence markers, and stunned residents gathering nearby. For the families, for friends, and for the entire Cranford community, the loss was immediate and devastating. Maria's and Isabella's futures, high school seniors planning their next steps, evaporated in a night. Candlelight vigils followed. Mourners left flowers and messages at the crash site. Grief and anger mixed in equal measure. From the start, investigators treated the case as a serious and suspicious death. Detectives searched for surveillance footage and witnesses, scraping hours of camera recordings from nearby intersections, homes, and businesses. Pieces of the vehicle were collected from the road and analyzed. Tire marks, fragments of a bumper, and scattered debris gave forensics a start. But the investigation would hinge on connecting those pieces to a person. Then, attention turned to a name that would spread across social feeds. 17-year-old Vincent Bataloro. News outlets confirmed his identity through court and traffic records. Online, Bataloro streamed under the handle VinnyBat18. According to reporting and the family's attorney, Bataloro had allegedly been targeting Maria. Friends and relatives said Maria was being stalked, and, in the days before the crash, she and her family had reportedly been harassed. One claim that alarmed the Neotus family was that the suspect allegedly swatted their home twice in September, on September 1st and September 15th. For those unfamiliar with the term, swatting is a dangerous prank in which someone places a false emergency call to send police, sometimes armed units, to an innocent person's home. It's a tactic that terrifies victims and puts them at serious risk. According to the family lawyer, the second swatting incident prompted police to show up. When officers arrived, Bataloro was reportedly parked outside the house. These are the kinds of details that would, if true, make the accusations far more than mere teenage mischief. There is also the social media trail. Days before the crash, Bataloro live-streamed with followers while playing a baseball video game. A casual stream that, in hindsight, raised alarm bells. In that stream and in other online posts, he spoke directly about Maria, accused her of dragging him into trouble, and even described plans to send a pizza to her house with money for a driver. Listeners heard language that sounded vengeful. 5 days after a live stream where he talked about vengeance, Maria and Isabella were dead. After the crash, attention on Bataloro intensified. Videos and live streams that showed him dismissive and defiant circulated online. While in one live stream he offered condolences in a manner that many found hollow, "I wish my sincerest condolences." He also said, repeatedly, that there's more to the story and that he would explain when he could. He spoke about being bullied and about mental health needs, and he warned followers to be kinder to one another. Yet at the same time, commenters flooded his live chat with accusations, some calling him a killer, and he turned off the chat. Within days, local authorities moved to arrest. Bataloro was taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder. But he remained in juvenile status. He was 17, and, as reporting noted, prosecutors had not yet filed to have the case moved into adult court. That detail intensified public outrage. Parents and neighbors asked how a teenager who allegedly stalked and harassed a classmate, and who now stood accused of killing her and another girl, could be treated under juvenile rules while the families of the victims grieved. For investigators, the sequence of events raised both questions and leads. What happened the night of September 29th? Did surveillance footage, vehicle debris, and witness statements point to a deliberate act. Had there been earlier steps, the swatings, online threats, public taunts that could have signaled escalating danger? And critically, if officers or community members had noticed patterns sooner, could the deaths have been prevented? The town wanted answers. The family lawyers demanded accountability. And online, the case became a story about the intersection of teenage life and modern technology. Live streams, social media threats, and the quick circulation of evidence and opinion. As Cranford mourned, investigators doubled down, knowing that proof would have to do what words could not. Explain what happened and why. The tragedy of September 29th left two families shattered and a community searching for reasons. The investigation into the deaths of Maria Neotus and Isabella Salas quickly became one of the most complex cases northern New Jersey had seen in years. It wasn't just a hit and run. It was a story that unfolded across social media, police reports, and the digital footprints of teenagers whose lives had intertwined in ways that would only become clear through months of work. From the moment police recovered the black Jeep Compass, the evidence began to tell its own story. The front-end damage was consistent with the impact that killed both girls. There were traces of broken glass, fiber, and paint transfer that matched the debris collected at the crash scene. Forensic technicians spent days analyzing the car, documenting everything from dent patterns to material embedded in the grille. Behind the scenes, digital investigators were just as busy. They began pulling data from cell phones, laptops, and social media accounts linked to Vincent Bataloro. The online activity painted a troubling picture. A teenager seemingly obsessed with Maria, who had allegedly gone to great lengths to intimidate and manipulate her. What police were seeing didn't fit the profile of an impulsive crash. It looked more like a series of deliberate acts leading up to a deadly conclusion. Detectives soon confirmed reports of the two swatting incidents earlier that month. Both had targeted Maria's home. Police logs and 911 recordings from September 1st and September 15th showed calls falsely claiming there was a violent emergency at the Neotus residence. Each time, heavily armed officers responded, only to find nothing wrong. The family had been terrified. According to the family's attorney, during the second incident, officers had actually spotted Bataloro parked nearby, watching from his car. No arrests were made then, but now those details were being re-examined as potential evidence of harassment and premeditation. At the prosecutor's office, investigators began piecing together a timeline. On September 24th, 5 days before the crash, Bataloro had streamed a live stream session on his gaming account, VinnyBat18. In that video, which was later archived and reviewed by authorities, he discussed his grievances against Maria. He accused her of spreading rumors of trying to get him in trouble and said he planned to send her a pizza. A phrase that, in hindsight, sounded like code. The stream was casual on the surface, but the undertones were clear. Anger, resentment, and an obsession that seemed to be escalating. Investigators also looked into a video post made days before the crash, in which Bataloro referred to vengeance and told his followers that people were lying about him. To those close to the victims, the statements were chilling. They felt like warnings of what was to come. After the crash, Bataloro's behavior online became part of the evidence file. He had gone live again on social media, just days after Maria and Isabella were killed. In that live stream, he appeared calm and unapologetic. He expressed what he called sincere condolences, but also insisted he was not guilty and that there's more to the story. His tone was detached, a performance that prosecutors later argued revealed a lack of remorse. At one point, he even told his followers to be kind and not to jump to conclusions, a comment that many viewers saw as hollow given the gravity of what had happened. While his followers debated, law enforcement focused on hard evidence. Surveillance footage from multiple cameras showed the black Jeep Compass moving through the area near the time of the crash. The vehicle's path was reconstructed frame by frame, from a traffic light 2 blocks away to a home security camera that caught its seconds before impact. There was no sign of braking, no attempt to slow down. The Jeep accelerated through the intersection and vanished into the dark. Forensic experts estimated the vehicle's speed to be well above the residential limit, likely around 60 miles per hour in a zone where pedestrians were common. This detail, paired with the lack of braking, strengthened prosecutors' belief that this was intentional, not accidental. Detectives also obtained phone records showing that in the hours before the crash, Bataloro had been online and messaging friends. Some of those conversations, according to investigative summaries, referenced getting even and making a point. Investigators considered these messages critical in establishing motive, proof that the crash might have been the violent climax of an ongoing fixation. The technical evidence was one side of the story. The emotional toll was another. Investigators working the case described the atmosphere inside the Cranford police station as tense. Many of them had teenagers of their own. They weren't just examining a crime scene. They were trying to understand how digital culture, obsession, and teenage hostility could spiral into lethal violence. The Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office took over the lead role with assistance from state police forensic analysts. Their primary challenge wasn't proving that Bataloro was driving. It was proving intent. To charge him with murder rather than vehicular homicide, prosecutors had to show that the act was deliberate, not reckless. That meant gathering every shred of evidence that could indicate planning. The harassment, the swattings, the threats, the live streams, the messages. While investigators built their case, lawyers for the victims' families spoke out publicly. They called for transparency and demanded that the suspect be tried as an adult. This was no accident, one attorney told reporters. This was a targeted act of violence. Public opinion quickly followed. Comment sections, Reddit threads, and community forums lit up with debate. Many expressing disbelief that someone just 17 years old could face such serious allegations, and others outraged that he wasn't already being treated as an adult offender. As detectives closed in, the timeline tightened. On September 30th, the day after the crash, police executed a search warrant on Bataloro's home. They seized digital devices, a computer, and clothing believed to have been worn that night. They also towed the Jeep for forensic processing. Within hours, the pieces fit together. Physical evidence at the scene, digital traces from his online accounts, and eyewitness testimony from drivers who saw the Jeep speeding away. When the arrest was made, Bataloro was calm. He reportedly told officers he was sorry for what happened, but that it wasn't what people think. At the station, he repeated those words to detectives, claiming the crash was an accident and that he didn't mean for it to go that far. He also mentioned feeling targeted and bullied, a statement his defense would later emphasize as they prepared to argue mental and emotional instability. By the end of that week, the charges were official: 2 counts of murder and multiple related offenses, including leaving the scene of a fatal crash. He was being held in juvenile custody, pending the prosecutor's decision on whether to seek an adult waiver. As the investigation expanded, new evidence continued to surface. Authorities tracked down additional live streams and archived clips from his online accounts. In one, Bataloro appeared to show the Jeep's front-end damage while dismissing rumors. In another, he spoke cryptically about people finally seeing the truth. Each video added fuel to the growing public outrage. The crash that had initially been treated as a hit-and-run was now viewed as a targeted attack, one planned, broadcast, and, in some ways, performed online. Detectives believed the digital trail not only connected him to the crime, but revealed his mindset in the days and hours leading up to it. For the investigators, the hardest part was knowing that every discovery came too late for Maria and Isabella. Every recovered file, every reconstructed video, was another reminder of 2 young lives that couldn't be restored. But the evidence they gathered would soon move from the investigation room to the courtroom. And that's where the story would take its next turn, into a legal battle that raised questions about intent, responsibility, and how justice should treat someone old enough to plan a crime but young enough to still be called a minor. When Vincent Bataloro appeared in court for the first time, the air was thick with tension. Reporters filled the benches, cameras lined the hallway, and outside, protesters held signs demanding justice for Maria Neotus and Isabella Salas. Both victims were just 17. Their names had become a rallying cry for parents, classmates, and neighbors who wanted the case treated not as a traffic incident, but as murder, exactly what prosecutors alleged it was. Inside the juvenile courtroom, things looked different. There were no orange jumpsuits or dramatic outbursts, just a 17-year-old boy in a hoodie and shackles, sitting beside his attorney. The hearing was closed to most of the public due to his age, but the few details that made it out painted a clear picture. Prosecutors were pressing for 2 counts of murder, and the defense was pushing to keep the case in juvenile court. For the victims' families, that was unacceptable. They argued that everything leading up to the tragedy, the alleged swattings, the stalking, the live streams, proved premeditation. In their eyes, this wasn't the mistake of a reckless teenager. It was a calculated act. Family attorney James Nolan spoke outside the courthouse, calling the girls' deaths the result of sustained harassment that ended in violence. His words echoed through every media outlet that night. The Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office faced a legal dilemma. Under New Jersey law, prosecutors have 60 days to decide whether to request a waiver, a motion to transfer a juvenile case into adult court. That decision would determine how the rest of the case unfolded. If tried as a juvenile, the maximum penalty would be detention until age 21. If waived to adult court, Bataloro could face life imprisonment. Public pressure mounted quickly. Local parents gathered for community meetings, demanding transparency. They questioned how a teen could allegedly stalk, harass, and ultimately kill 2 girls, and yet still be treated as a minor. Lawmakers began weighing in, calling for reform in how serious juvenile crimes were handled. For a small town in New Jersey, this case had become a flashpoint. Meanwhile, new revelations emerged in court filings. Detectives testified about the digital evidence found on Bataloro's devices, messages showing resentment toward Maria, and browser searches related to vehicle crashes and police investigations. Prosecutors argued that this data strengthened their claim of intent. They told the court that he wasn't just a reckless driver. He was planning something, and Maria was the focus. Defense attorneys painted a different picture. They claimed Vincent was an emotionally unstable teenager suffering from mental health issues and online bullying. They pointed to his live streams as evidence of a young person unraveling under social pressure, not plotting murder. They emphasized that he stayed home most nights, had no prior criminal record, and that the crash, while tragic, was not premeditated. They said his live streams were outbursts of frustration, not confessions. The prosecution countered that argument with chilling precision. They replayed portions of his own live stream, clips where he discussed getting revenge and called Maria's accusations false. One prosecutor summarized it in court. He told the world what he was thinking. He broadcast his mindset days before it happened. As hearings continued, the families of Maria and Isabella sat through every session, clutching photos of the girls. Their attorney described them as inseparable friends, bright, funny, and kind-hearted teenagers who had their futures ahead of them. They were just kids, he said during one press conference. And they died terrified because someone they knew decided to take his anger out on them. Community members followed every development. In candlelight vigils and online forums, the question kept resurfacing. How much of this could have been prevented? Many pointed to the 2 swatting incidents earlier in the month as missed red flags. Each time, Maria's family had called police, reporting harassment. Each time, the calls were logged and investigated, but no charges were filed. Now, after the crash, those earlier events looked like warnings no one had acted on. As more evidence surfaced, prosecutors began leaning toward filing the adult waiver. Legal analysts explained that, in cases involving premeditated homicide, such motions were common. Still, it required approval from a judge. The prosecutor's office needed to show probable cause that Bataloro intended to kill or acted with extreme indifference to human life, a high bar under state law. The hearings were often emotional. Isabella's mother spoke publicly for the first time, describing the pain of losing her only child. "My daughter went out for a drive with her best friend," she said, "and never came home. We want justice, not excuses." Maria's father, through tears, added, "This wasn't an accident. He knew what he was doing." Behind the courtroom drama, investigators continued analyzing Bataloro's online content. More videos and chat logs surfaced. In one private message thread, he appeared to discuss the earlier swatting incidents, calling them funny and bragging that she freaked out. Another message mentioned taking back control. Each revelation added fuel to public outrage and strengthened the case for premeditation. Reporters covering the hearings noted how unbothered Vincent sometimes appeared. One described him as quiet but detached, rarely showing emotion even when details of the crash were read aloud. His defense team insisted that his demeanor reflected shock, not arrogance. But for the grieving families, it only deepened their pain. As the weeks passed, more experts weighed in. Psychologists debated whether Vincent's age should protect him from adult prosecution. Legal analysts discussed the growing overlap between digital harassment and real-world violence, how online obsessions can turn deadly. The case became a point of national discussion about accountability in the age of live streams and viral threats. By the end of the 60-day review period, prosecutors were expected to file their waiver motion. That decision would officially mark whether Bataloro would face trial as an adult or remain in the juvenile system. For Maria's and Isabella's loved ones, that choice meant everything. In the meantime, the community continued to mourn. 2 high school memorials were held, where classmates released lanterns and shared stories about the girls, their humor, their kindness, and their friendship. Teachers spoke about their promise and potential. Friends cried as they described how they still expected to see them walking down the hall. Local residents also began demanding new laws, stricter penalties for swatting, better monitoring of online threats, and stronger protections for minors who report harassment. "We can't undo what happened," one community leader said, "but we can make sure no other family lives this nightmare." The tragedy of September 29th left a lasting scar on New Jersey. It showed how easily modern technology, live streams, online rivalries, digital threats, can spiral into deadly consequences. It forced parents, schools, and police departments to confront the blurred lines between online cruelty and real-world danger. As the case moves toward trial, one fact remains undeniable. 2 young girls are gone, and a 17-year-old boy stands accused of taking their lives. The courtroom battles ahead will decide Vincent Bataloro's fate. But for the families of Maria Neotus and Isabella Salas, justice will never bring back what they lost. 2 friends, 2 daughters, 2 lives that ended far too soon. Like and subscribe for more true crime stories like this.